This video is brought to you by Elgato Gaming. With 4K capture cards, green screens, and the most advanced lighting technology available, Elgato Gaming has everything you need to kickstart your streaming career. To learn more on how Elgato can improve your production, click the affiliate link in the description below. Wrestling and video games should be a perfect pairing, right? I mean, it's fighting in a virtual world. What can go wrong? Unfortunately, that's not always the case. With over 100 games released within the genre, it should come as no surprise that there are train wrecks scattered throughout a catalog of good and great games. I'm Mike from Sports Gamers Online, and these are the 10 worst wrestling games of all time. For this list, we take a look at games that range from the buggy and bland to the downright terrible. With so many to choose from, however, we limited this to just major console and PC releases only, so that means games like WWE Aftershock and WWE Betrayal don't make the cut. Also, we decided to leave The Simpsons Wrestling out of this because, well, then the list would be too obvious for number one.
Sports Gamers Online is the #1 source for the sports gamer.
We kick things off at number 10 with WrestleMania 21. After 2 years away from the console, WWE games returned to the original Xbox in 2005 with WrestleMania 21. The game saw numerous delays before launch, which should have been a warning sign to fans. Unfortunately, many, including myself, still bought this clunky title just so they can get their wrestling fix on the Xbox. The gameplay was slower than anything we had ever seen, there were numerous game-breaking bugs, and online play was limited to just singles matches. No matter how hard you really tried to enjoy this game, it was just too buggy to get any valuable time with it. The only reason this isn't higher on the list is that the game's storyline was a good one, and the voice acting wasn't too bad either. Also, the visuals, they still hold up today despite it being a 15-year-old title. Next up at number 9, we have ECW Hardcore Revolution. After the WWE left Acclaim for THQ, the now defunct developer was left with a wrestling engine, but no promotion to build for. Enter ECW, a promotion that finally got a national television deal in 1999. Fans like myself were excited about finally getting to play as wrestlers like Sandman, Tommy Dreamer, and others. But that excitement quickly turned to disappointment after ECW Hardcore Revolution hit store shelves. The controls were difficult to learn, the visuals couldn't compete with those of the WWF offerings, and the game just had no real replay value at all. In the end, it was just WWF Attitude reskinned with ECW wrestlers. Coming in at number 8, we have WWE 2K15. Now this game was the series debut on the Xbox One and PlayStation 4, and it was, without question, the worst generation jump for a wrestling series. While fans expected improvements over WWE 2K14, 2K and Yuke seemingly had other plans. Instead of a deep, immersive game, fans got a watered-down and boring experience. I mean, 2K had to release a list of all the features that weren't in the game just to make sure people didn't get too excited. That list ended up being longer than the features that did make the cut. There was no create an arena, create a finisher, or even create a story. And the career mode? Well, it was just a boring lather, rinse, repeat mode that left you being told there was nothing to do. Seriously, you'd go weeks without having a match on the show simply because the GM had nothing for you. At number 7, it's WCW Mayhem. Back in 1999, EA decided it was time to get into the wrestling business when it picked up the WCW license. Despite it being an unknown area for the studio, EA took the license of the second largest wrestling promotion in the world and decided to put out a game. Yet, rather than take their time with making it right, fans were given an extremely rushed product. Every wrestler had the same moveset that was not only hard to learn, but made the game repetitive and boring. To top it off, the graphics looked early PS1 N64 era bad, as opposed to anything pushing the limits of what the systems could do. Next up, it's WWE 2K20. Now, some may see its inclusion as a recency bias, but WWE 2K20 launched as broken as a playable game could be. From the glitches to the crashes, 2K20 sees a once great series fall to lows it's never experienced before. The visuals look like they've gone 10 years in the past, the modes are simply boring, and it's a microtransaction-filled grindfest that just isn't fun for anyone. The game has been universally panned and could become one of the most hated WWE titles of all time when it's all said and done. The only reason it's not worse on this list has nothing to do with it, as opposed to everything else coming up after here. At number 5, it's WWF In Your House. With only a roster of 10 wrestlers and a handful of matches to choose from, WWF In Your House was one of the most boring games on this list. The gameplay wasn't awful really, it was just repetitive even for mid-90s standards. At the end of the day, this was just a generic fighting game slapped with WWF visuals and awful commentary. If you played this game, it was either borrowed from a friend or rented from Blockbuster. Next at number 4 we have the Switch port for WWE 2K18. Now overall, WWE 2K18 wasn't a terrible game. Did it have its issues? Absolutely. But there was still fun to be had with it. That being said, this awful port to the Nintendo Switch left no fun to be had whatsoever. The game ran like a potato on the hybrid console with terrible frameworks, lower quality visuals, and awful response time. It was as though porting the game over from the more powerful consoles took away 75% of the game's ability to run. It was damn near unplayable and a waste of everyone's time and money, especially at a $60 price tag. At number 3, it's the entire Backyard Wrestling franchise. When professional companies say don't try this at home, it should go for video game developers too. Backyard Wrestling as a series is another great example of just because something can be done, doesn't mean it should be done. The game had some of the worst gameplay in a wrestling game and looked like it was designed with a potato. Every move had blood go everywhere, and the wrestlers often looked like they were simply floating around the venue. Nothing about this game suggests it should have been made. Likely the only reason it saw the light of day is due to the era it came out in. After all, back in the early 2000s, any game that could be made was probably going to get a console release. And at number 2 we have WWF Royal Rumble for the Sega Dreamcast. Where to begin with this one? WWF Royal Rumble was a con disguised as a video game. What fans expected to be the first Dreamcast exclusive wrestling game turned out to be just a port of an already established arcade game. It had just 2 game modes and a small roster, which led to the same people coming out in a single Royal Rumble match. The game was just simply a button masher where the wrestling moves and even finishers did absolutely nothing to determine the outcomes. There's just no reason for anyone to own this game. Like, ever. Now before getting to the worst game of all time, here's some honorable mentions that you should probably avoid for your sanity. At number 1, we have WCW Backstage Assault. There's no way you can't convince me that Vince Russo must have been behind this game. I can't even imagine how this game came about back in 2000. Someone legitimately had to suggest to a group of EA executives that the best thing for the new WCW game was to have it only feature backstage matches. I mean, seriously, how does someone with any sort of mind think that releasing such a limiting game would be a good idea? I get that it was around the time that WCW was heading towards failure, but at least give fans something to remember the company by with a good game, you know? So sports gamers, what do you think is the worst wrestling game of all time? Let us know in the comment section below, and be sure to subscribe to Sports Gamers Online and hit that bell to be notified whenever a new video goes live. And for more sports content daily, visit our website at sportsgamersonline.com.